وأولئك لهم عذاب عظيم يوم تبيض وجوه وتسود وجوه فأما الذين اسودت وجوههم أكفرتم بعد إيمانكم فذوقوا العذاب بما كنتم تكفرون وأما الذين ابيضت وجوههم ففي رحمة الله هم فيها خالدون تلك آيات الله نتلوها عليك بالحق وما الله يريد ظلما للعالمين ولله ما في السماوات وما في الأرض وإلى الله ترجع الأمور. I have repeated the recitation of some of the verses which we thought we had already dealt with yesterday. In the meantime, there are 2 or 3 points which have occurred to me or have been pointed out to me, which I would like to mention again in reference to these verses. Number 1, I mentioned that all the 72 sects which have been mentioned in the tradition of Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam as against one Jama'ah are hellbound. Now this statement seems to be rather too emphatic and as I say it in English, coming it too strong. But in fact, these are the very words of the tradition which have been quoted by all the Muslim scholars exactly like this. And they all conclude the same thing. The debate has never been about the 72 being hellbound or heaven-bound. The debate has always been revolving around the central contentious point whether A is the Jama'ah or B is Jama'ah or C is Jama'ah, 2, 3, 4, 5, which one is the Jama'ah? As far as the rest are concerned, they are all treated as one block, and they have always been mentioned by all the scholars as hellbound. So when some non-Ahmadi Muslims hear this from us, they take it to their heart. They think that we have declared them to be hellbound. This is not so. This is an historical treatment of a tradition in reference to the verses which we have been discussing, and as such I quoted exactly as the earlier people had treated this tradition in relation to these verses. As far as the Ahmadiyya view is concerned, the interpretation of this tradition is different in our view from the rest of the Muslim scholars' views. We do believe that in totality, a group or a sect can be declared hellbound, yet it does not mean that all the members belonging to that group would be hellish. This total condemnation is entirely against the dictates of the Holy Quran itself. So this should not be misunderstood by anybody, that when I quoted these scholars and declared that the 72 would be hellbound and one would be heaven-bound, it meant that according to our belief as well, all the members of all other sects are hellish. This is not true. As I have been explaining earlier to you and also during my address on the 24th of April, I made it clear to all the guests, non-Muslim guests as well, that according to the Holy Quran, no religion is totally condemned, entirely condemned to a degree that each member of that religion is condemned. As you will read further, you will be surprised to find that this point has been made clearer in the following, somewhere in the following verses. And this is the misunderstanding which has been removed. All the Jews and all the Christians, though in totality are considered wrong, As such, if you ask the edict, religious edict, you can say they are hellbound, but it does not mean, according to the Holy Quran, that each member of the Jewish society or the Christian society is hellish in himself. There are exceptions. And that is why I opened up the subject of uh, what would mean, what one should understand by this condemnation. So I take up that issue now. According to the Holy Quran, all religions are from God, and those people who belong to a religion sincerely and do not deviate from the fundamentals of those religions and act according to their belief, sincerely and honestly, such people as have faith in the day of resurrection should not fear. They will be rewarded by God and they have nothing to fear. Now, this applies only to those to whom the message of Islam has not reached in a manner as it had become understandable by them. So when I say Islam is the final religion, and everybody would be uh, put to question according to the Islamic teachings, that is what I meant, and I'll make this point further clear in the light of some verses of the Holy Quran. So Islam is the final religion in this sense that number one, it is the final consummate message which replaces other messages in principle, but in detail only those fall under the category of such people as would be answerable according to Islamic teachings who have understood those teachings, or to whom the teachings have been conveyed in an effective, proper manner. As we say in Urdu, jin par hujjat, itmam hujjat ho gaya. This is the word which you should understand properly. Itmam hujjat means when a message has been conveyed in a manner as there is no reasonable area of doubt left, that a normal person should understand that message and accept it. After that, the matters are left to God. And as far as human beings are concerned, they have fulfilled their duty to convey the message. That is one meaning of Islam being the final religion. Those who rejected the message at the time of Hazrat sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the message was directly conveyed to them by Hazur Akram sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his followers in the first part of Islam. Those people have been mentioned in the Holy Quran as hellbound very clearly, because there we know for certain that there was no justification left for them to continue to reject Islam. If there are some exceptions, as the Holy Quran mentions, somewhere in the world, or some people even in Arabia to whom the message was not directly conveyed, they would still have the benefit of doubt as far as we are concerned. As far as God knows, He knows well. There is no question of doubt. He knows if there is any justification for their not accepting Islam, He would treat them kindly. This is our faith in God. This is our view, the worldwide view. How could we believe that Muslims would be treated differently by God? Whatever sect they belong to, the sect in totality may be declared as hellbound as it has been declared by the Holy Prophet ﷺ himself. Yet they cannot be condemned in totality as such that each member of the sect should be considered as hellbound. This is something which is totally beyond human access. that is to say, the knowledge of somebody being hellbound or not, individually, is something which is completely outside human access. So we should leave these matters to God. There is another aspect also of Islam being the final touchstone for judging people on the day of resurrection, which has been mentioned in the Holy Quran in a verse. Of course, references are made in other verses too, but here it has been made very clear. فَكَيْفَ إِذَا جِئْنَا مِنْ كُلِّ أُمَّةٍ بِشَهِيدٍ وَجِئْنَا بِكَ عَلَى هَؤُلَاءِ شَهِيدًا. And what would be the state of affairs when each ummah would be judged by a witness, that is their prophet. Shaheed here means the prophet of the ummah. Each ummah would be judged by their prophet, and all the prophets would be judged by you, O Prophet of God, Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Wajena bika ala haulai shahida. And haulai is all-encompassing expression, which does not only encompass the prophets but their ummas as well, because all that has been mentioned before is covered by the word haulai. It is related to us that when Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam once asked one of his companions to recite the Holy Quran to him, the portion which he recited also contained this verse. When he reached this verse, he suddenly heard sobbing, and he saw Rasulullah Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam totally breaking down in emotions. When he heard this verse, that this is his status, the whole of the mankind is going to be judged by his behavior and his conduct. He broke down and said, "Stop it. Enough, enough. I can't take it more." So this is the final verdict of the Holy Quran to which I was referring. It was not just my own personal interpretation. It was based on this final categorical judgment of the Holy Quran that all the people in the end would be judged according to Islam. Now, any man who looks at these issues superficially would disagree, of course, like Very does. I have got his reference. He says all these claims are just hocus pocus, meaningless. They are not substantiated. But the fact is, the Holy Quran is a very logical book, which is a word of God, of course, but it does not simply dictate things. It also explains things in such convincing manner that the message of the book becomes rational and accessible to all the people, whether they believe or do not believe. So how could a faith which appears in the end, a way of life, which is at the very end of human procession, in terms of time in chronological order, Islam is revealed at the very end. How earlier people could be judged by that message? This is the big question. The answer is given, فَأَقِمْ وَجْهَكَ لِلدِّينِ حَنِيفًا فِطْرَةَ اللَّهِ الَّتِي فَطَرَ النَّاسَ عَلَيْهَا لَا تَبْدِيلَ لِخَلْقِ اللَّهِ ذَلِكَ الدِّينُ الْقَيِّمُ وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. O Prophet of Allah, stand steadfast, facing that faith which is always inclined towards God. Fitrat Allah illati, this is Allah's fitrat, Allah's nature, on which God has created humankind. Your religion is based on that fitrah. Your religion is based on the nature of man, which is created after the nature of God. And la tabdila li khalqillah. In this regard, there is no change whatsoever in the creation of God. No change can be effected. So, because Islam is the teaching of nature, based on nature, a nature which was created by God after His own fashion. So, they would all be judged on the criterion of Islam, because here there would be a book which remains unchanged. So, only in that much they would be judged, where the dictates of Sharia, Islamic Sharia, relate to human nature. And because this is exactly how earlier religions were revealed in a limited manner, so all the religions basically have the components of Islam. So there is no internal or external contradiction between in these statements. And when the Holy Prophet is addressed as Wajena bika ala haulai shahida, this is the meaning. The teachings of all other religions have become corrupted. They themselves do not know what was revealed to their prophets. The Holy Quran has revived the fundamental teachings of all religions. So all the prophets and their followers would be judged according to their faith, all right, but as the final testimony, Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam would be presented as the final prophet whose teachings remain unchanged, and they would be judged on that sure, positive, unfailing criteria. Another question relating to the previous verses was pointed out to me by Bashir Hayat Sahib, who is well known as the chief questioner and very famous the whole worldwide as a specialist in asking questions. He pointed out something which, in fact, really had escaped my attention yesterday. When I said there is no Imam in any other sect, what I had in mind were the Sunni sects, whose concept of Imamat is very close to our concept of Imamat. And when I made that emphatic statement, it was only the Sunni sects which were in my mind, and which was a mistake. I should have mentioned that among Shias, of course, there is a sort of Imamat. But that Imamah differs in its basic features, the concept of that Imamat, from the concept of Imamat which is common between Ahmadis and all other Sunni sects. We believe that Imamat is something which is bestowed by God to a person whom He considers fit to function as the Imam. And this is a matter of God's choice. It is not an office which is hereditary. So when I spoke of Imama, I spoke in that sense. So this should be very clearly understood. All the Shia sects which have a sort of Imam have an Imam which, according to their concept, has inherited Imamat. Being the son of an Imam or one of the sons of the Imam, they became, they had the right to be declared Imams. So they are blindly following the sons of some Aimma who were, in the earlier days, we must admit, who were great Muslim saints and scholars. There is no doubt. But they also are not entitled to be called Imam in the sense, as we read in the Holy Quran, as a person directly appointed by God. Because hereditary Imama is unknown in the Holy Quran. So on personal basis, we do respect them very deeply, because many among them, or most I should say among them, are known to be very holy people, very pious, very scholarly. And when you read their writings or things reported to them, from them, you're surprised that they're all enlightened people. There's no doubt about it. Not like ordinary mullahs. So they have a quality of imamat which is inborn in every pious man. That is something else. But their entitlement to imama cannot come just because they are born as sons to somebody. That imama, according to the Holy Quran, receives its authenticity from God. So that is why in any tradition, in no tradition of Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, you will hear the promise of Aimma as such. If there was to be a continuous line of Aimma born after each, one after the other, then the Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam should have told us that imamat would be inherited and continuously, and there will be so many Aimma, I promise you, you follow them and you are safe. Nowhere, no hadith mentions such things at all. There is only one mention repeatedly of that of one Imam Mahdi or Al Imam al Mahdi. So that is the imamat which I had in mind, of course. An imamat which is created by God and believed to be created by God. And now you scan the entire world of Islam, including the Shias, you won't find any imamat anywhere. Hereditary imamat is meaningless as far as the Holy Quran and the study of religion is concerned. Again, it is possible, and of course we see the evidence from the Holy Quran and the history of religions, that an imam's son is appointed by God as imam. This is possible. I'm not rejecting this concept. But he would become imam not on the strength of his being the son of an imam, but on the strength of that fresh direct appointment from God. So as such, those aimma which are seen today have no such authority. And they never claim such an authority. Ask any such aimma of Shias, have you been directly appointed by God? They say, no, 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 it's not so. Through inheritance we have received this imamat. So when I said there is no imama, no imamat or no imam elsewhere except in Ahmadiyyat, although apparently in Shias you will find some imams, but they are different. Now, having made the concept of imamat clear, now you would agree that this statement still holds good, even including Shias. Another very interesting point was raised by Imam Sahib in the other sense of the word. Mujibur Rahman Rashid. Ataul Mujib Rashid. Of course, he's Imam Sahib, but of a different sort. The question he has, not the question, but he has made a very interesting observation. Yesterday, I was saying, I told you that tafriqa, which has been mentioned, which has been the main subject of discussion in these verses, is in fact that kufr to which the Holy Quran refers here in the verse which we studied. And that is, I would repeat, فَأَمَّا yes, فَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ اسْوَدَتْ وُجُوهُهُمْ أَكَفَرْتُمْ بَعْدَ إِيمَانِكُمْ. Those of you whose faces would be darkened, did you reject truth after having believed it once? So who are the people who did it, who are under this application of this verse? The Muslim scholars previously have also mentioned that Muslims are addressed in this verse, and those Muslims who are munafiqeen, they are mentioned in this verse. But I pointed out that this is a verse of a much larger application. According to the subject being discussed, we can safely presume and infer that this verse refers to all such Muslims who fell prey to tafriqa or deviance. And kufr here is applicable to the act of tafriqa. The Imam Sahib has pointed out that in two places in this discussion, the Holy Quran has mentioned nema as the instrument of bringing believers together. Which is the verse? कहाँ है वो? और दूसरी जगह? अच्छा. Now, in this connection, in one single verse, twice the word nema is mentioned. وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ. This is 104, verse 104. وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا وَاذْكُرُوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ عَلَيْكُمْ إِذْ كُنْتُمْ أَعْدَاءً فَأَلَّفَ بَيْنَ قُلُوبِكُمْ فَأَصْبَحْتُمْ بِنِعْمَتِهِ إِخْوَانًا. So twice tafriqa is mentioned and twice nema is mentioned. As I quoted earlier, some very great, well and renowned Muslim scholars have pointed out that the word nema here means prophethood. And without prophethood, a believing people cannot be truly united and made into one single body. So it is to that nema that the Holy Quran referred to when it spoke of Ahmad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam having brought about this most wonderful miracle of bringing about a great spiritual revolution in Arabia, that out of the warring factions of the Arabs, which had got divided into hundreds and thousands of smaller factions, he welded them together, molded them together into one single body. This, the Holy Quran says, has been brought about with nema, with prophethood. It could not have been brought about in any other way. Now, the simple question which arises is, once the Muslims get divided again, how could they be reunited unless there is nema? Perhaps that is why nema is doubly mentioned here and twice mentioned here. It has to be nema and only nema. And I tell you from my long experience of discussions with various groups of ulama and others who used to come to Rabwa to participate in a question-answer session, which I used to hold in Rabwa as well as when I went out. I pointedly raised this question to them that once divided, how can you get united again? Study the history of religion and show me one single instance where people who got divided became united with the efforts of the ulama of those people. It has never happened. It can never happen. It's impossible. So if there is no nabuwa of any sort, if the nema has come to an end permanently and forever, then also it is tantamount to claiming that there is absolutely no hope for the divided Muslims to become united again under one flag. There is no other conclusion which you can draw. So although Sharia has come to an end, no doubt, this book which we are studying today, or have been studying throughout our lives and will inshallah study throughout our lives, in each word of this book we have firm, unshakable faith. This book is the final message from God. It contains everything which humanity would ever need. This is our faith. But this book remains to be the same book, yet people had got divided. What is the difference? The difference is only between Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam being with us and not being with us. So his finality still continues to be the finality of his religion. But his person is no longer with us. That is the nema which has been referred to, not the book itself. Because if you translate nema to be the book or the teachings, then there should not have been any tafriqa at all. All Muslims believe that the book remains intact, uninterpolated. Why tafriqa then? Only thing is which is no more is Hazrat Aqdas Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam in his person. In his spiritual life he is there. But that is nema, his presence, which made all the difference in the world. And suddenly when he was removed from the scene, God called him back. You see, the whole Arab Muslim world got divided again. The first split was like the shattering of a glass. The entire Muslim world seemed to have been broken into smithereens. And then through Khilafah, which is continuation of Nema, in person, they got united once again. Then again, repeatedly it happened. This is why I have been always interpreting Hablullah as Nabuwa and in continuation Khilafah. Again, I have been pointing out to you that afterwards, whenever a spiritual body was created as one spiritual united body, it was always created by such saintly, godly people who appeared later on throughout the history of Islam by way of khulafa, although you don't remember them as khulafa because they were not khulafa in the strict sense of having inherited this office from Khilafat Rashida directly. But Hazrat Masih Maud has made it specifically clear and amply clear that they were all the fruits of that promise of God which we find under Ayat-e-Istikhlaf. And these holy people who are Mujaddideen mainly and others who continuously kept the Muslim body to start gathering again under one flag and stop the further deterioration were all in reality khulafa of some sort. And as such, because they represented the nema, so they also were instrumental in some sort of holding people together under one flag. Now, once this process has started, you see, every other step in history was downward. This is the most tragic thing to be observed. Every century was a step down until the 14th century came. After that, there are two divisions in the world of Islam. One division, which is Ahmadiyya Jama'ah, believes that the Mujaddid of the 14th century did come and reconstituted and reinstituted the office of Khilafah. ثُمَّ تَكُونُ خِلَافَةٌ عَلَى مِنْهَاجِ النُّبُوَّةِ. This was the promise which got fulfilled by Hazrat sallallahu alaihi wasallam, promised by him which was fulfilled by God. And the rest of the Muslims believe not only that Hazrat Masih Maud was a fake claimant, he was not Mujaddid, but they virtually believe that no Mujaddid ever came at all. So the 14th century passed until at the very end, when only a year, 2, 3 years were left, whenever we had discussions in Pakistan, I remember going out once to Jehlam, and there we held a question answer session. This was the question raised. And imagine, till that time, the Muslims did speak of the importance of Mujaddidiyya and did believe in that. And particularly, they emphasized the very special role which the 14th Mujaddid was to play. The Mujaddid of the 14th century, he would be at the uh, beginning of the 14th century, end of the 13th century. So, one of the headmasters of his school, who was very well educated, I think he had two, three double and MAs as well, he insisted that this promise is so categorical and positive that this century will not end until the Mujaddid is appeared. So I said, it is about to end. He said, no, no, you don't see. You will think it has ended. But the last day would continuously, eternally go on and will never set until the Mujaddid has come. So this last day has started with them, never to come to an end. This is stupid. This is, this is an attitude where you shut your eyes and shut your ears and you say, we are not going to listen to. This is the meaning of Itmam Hujjah. So, unification of a shattering ummah, which goes on splitting again and again and repeatedly in every section, is impossible unless someone from God reappears. That is the only way. So the translation of the word nema is a very valid translation because it exactly and entirely coincides with the verdict of history and the verdict of human psychology. Unless God sends someone, a divided ummah cannot be reunited. This is the verdict which no one on earth can change. La tabdila li khalqillah. There is also a meaning of this declaration. So now we turn to the second verse, the second ruku. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم كنتم خير أمة أخرجت للناس تأمرون بالمعروف وتنهون عن المنكر وتؤمنون بالله ولو آمن أهل الكتاب لكان خيرا لهم منهم المؤمنون وأكثرهم الفاسقون لن يضروكم إلا أذى وإن يقاتلوكم يولوكم الأدبار ثم لا ينصرون ضربت عليهم الذلة أينما ثقفوا إلا بحبل من الله وحبل من الناس وباءوا بغضب من الله وضربت عليهم المسكنة ذلك بأنهم كانوا يكفرون بآيات الله ويقتلون الأنبياء بغير حق ذلك بما عصوا وكانوا يعتدون ليسوا سواء من أهل الكتاب أمة قائمة يتلون آيات الله آناء الليل وهم يسجدون. Now instead of finishing the whole ruku, I would leave it at that because we're short of time now. It will not be possible for me to finish even the first verse. So in next verse, inshallah, we'll take the whole ruku up again. Kuntum khaira ummatin ukhrijat linnase ta'muruna bil ma'ruf wa tanhauna 'anil munkar. You are the best people raised for the good of mankind. Or it should have been you are the best people ever raised for the good of mankind. You enjoin good and forbid evil and believe in Allah. And if the people of the book had believed, it would have surely been better for them Some of them are believers, but most of them are transgressors. They cannot harm you, save that they may cause you slight hurt. And if they fight you, they will turn their backs to you, then they shall not be helped. They shall be smitten with abasement wherever they are. ये नीचे से ऊपर की तरफ लाइट आपने अरेंज की हुई है, यहाँ होनी चाहिए. They shall be smitten with abasement wherever they are found, unless they are protected by a covenant with Allah or by a covenant with men. They have incurred the wrath of Allah and have been smitten with wretchedness. That is because they rejected the signs of Allah and sought to slay the prophets unjustly. That is because they rebelled and used to transgress. They are not all alike among the people of the book. There is a party who stand by their covenant. They recite the word of Allah in the hours of night and prostrate themselves before Him. Kuntum khaira ummatin has this very first statement has raised have generated many debates. The most not important, but the prominent, when you study the earlier classical commentaries, would be around the word kuntum. Kuntum is an Arabic expression which can be used differently and understood differently. Literal translation also would differ, because either way it would be a different literal translation. The translation chosen here is "you are the best people," while the word kana is a word of past tense. And there are other factors also which make the word important, and it needs special attention. Kana can be used either in perfect sense or in imperfect sense, or as something even outside the two. I'll explain that to you by illustrations, otherwise you will not understand. Kuntum, if it is taken in perfect sense, would mean asbahtum, you have become. So in this sense, the translation would be kuntum khaira ummatin ukhrijat linnas. O people of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, asbahtum khaira ummatin. By following him, you have become the very best of people who were ever raised for the benefit of mankind. And kuntum, if treated imperfectly, means you were. Initially, it would mean you were the best people. So, because most people would like to translate this word and treat this verb as naqisa, kana naqisa, which is imperfect, so they are in trouble about it, and they have to find a way to satisfy their the certain objections which are concomitant to this translation. Muslims are present who are addressed. Why should God say kuntum? You were. And also there is a very dangerous implication. If they were, are they not now? So this has been treated by Allama Razi and many others like him, as to mean that Of course, the word could be applicable to the past in the sense that you were promised to be the best people. Some have interpreted it to mean that in the blueprint of God's creation, you were always the best people. And some have translated this as you have been referred to by the earlier prophets, and the mention is found in their books as you would appear to be the best people because the best prophet would come, so he would create the best people. So they resolve this problem by understanding this word in the past tense to apply to the prophecies or to the potentialities of Islam, which can be understood in the form of a blueprint of God's design. As far as the second objection is concerned, that if you were, are you still? They quote some verses of the Holy Quran where kana is definitely used as imperfect, and yet there is no discontinuation of its application to the present. For instance, وَكَانَ اللَّهُ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمًا. This is an imperfect kana which has been used here. Now, would you take it to mean that God used to be Ghafur Rahim and no longer is? So this kana in this application would acquire a sense of continuity, istimrar. That is to say, God, like He always was, still is Ghafur Rahim. So the meaning of this verse here would be, O people of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, like you were always destined to be the best, so you still are the best. Or in the perfect sense, the meaning would be that by following the most perfect prophet, you have emerged as the most perfect people on earth, so you are the best ummah. Now the reason why they are called best, this has been debated again. As far as Vary goes, he says it's a very tall claim, but there is no proof whatsoever. How could they be the best? Hazrat Masih Maud has discussed it in detail, this verse, most beautifully, and he has pointed out to some areas of its interpretation which have never been comprehended by earlier scholars. But I'll come to that later. In this regard, he has expressed this subject in prose and in poems. For instance, you remember this famous couplet of Hazrat Masih Maud, हम हुए खैरे उमम तुझसे ही है खैरे रसूल तेरे बढ़ने से कदम आगे बढ़ाया हमने. We have become the best people because our leader is the best. And this meaning is borne out by the context, because I have already told you that when the Holy Quran declared tilka ayatullah natluha alayka bil haqqi mallahu yuridu zulman lil alameen, here zulman lil alameen refers to Hazrat sallallahu alaihi wasallam's universal capacity. And because he was a universal messenger, it was impossible for God to leave any defect in his teaching, because it would become tantamount to God being cruel to the whole of the universe. So where he is looking for a proof, the proof is here before him, but he can't see. That is the meaning of eyes being blinded and not being able to see things. The fact is that there are many other proofs as well. Of course, when you compare the teachings of Islam in detail with the teachings of any other earlier religion, you will find it is a comparison of imperfection with perfection. Imperfection in the sense that in comparison to Islamic teachings, they appear to be imperfect. But in comparison to their times, of course they were perfect teachings. You should never denounce any teachings by God at any age as imperfect inherently. God can never reveal imperfect teachings. But they are related to time sometimes. And if the time requires limited revelation of truth, then unlimited revelation would not be a perfect perfect treatment. Then it would be a wrong attitude. If somebody has a smaller vessel to be filled, you overfill it, and whatever you overfill it with will spill out. So it depends on the vessels which the human people at a certain development of their evolution presented to God in relation to their capacity to absorb a message. They were given a message. So looking at that message from that vantage point of that time, the message was perfect. But I'm talking from a different angle altogether now. When you begin to compare Islam in its totality, in its detailed teachings with the earlier religions, then they will all appear to be imperfect. At least in one thing, they will obviously be imperfect. The Holy Quran is the one book, the only book, which claims that it has collected all the fundamental truths revealed earlier to different prophets in different eras and in different parts of the world. So the comprehensive teaching, which comprises all the parts, is most certainly better than the parts of which it is made. Even if you do not declare the parts to be imperfect, within their own limited applications, each section of which Islam is made would be perfect, because it would be an earlier limited revelation. But when it is collected together under one larger pail, then of course, in comparison, it becomes the most perfect. Apart from this, also in continuation of the subject being discussed, there is another reason mentioned earlier of why Islam should be the most perfect and the best of religions which were ever raised for the benefit of mankind. Turn to the verse 85, and then you will find the reason why. قل آمنا بالله وما أنزل علينا وما أنزل على إبراهيم وإسماعيل وإسحاق ويعقوب والأسباط. This is the same subject we are discussing. وما أوتي موسى وعيسى والنبيون من ربهم لا نفرق بين أحد منهم وَنَحْنُ لَهُ مُسْلِمُونَ. This verse offers two reasons why Islam must be treated logically as the best of religions, which was ever revealed to man for the benefit of mankind. Number one, which I have already discussed. آمنا بالله وما أنزل علينا وما أنزل على إبراهيم وإسماعيل وإسحاق ويعقوب والأسباط. We believe not only in Islam, that special teaching which is revealed as Islam, but we believe in all the teachings which were earlier revealed. So there is a totality of belief which is found only in Islam, and in no other religion it is even remotely mentioned. This is a standing challenge for all the people of the earth, all the religions. You can, with positive confidence, you can confront anybody, humbly of course, don't be boastful, but tell them this is a book which has strengthened our hands. So we offer you this, we request you maybe, not a challenge, but a request. please try to find any mention in your book which speaks of other prophets' truths and mentions that they were all revealed from Allah and your book contains those truths and makes it incumbent upon its followers to have belief in those books and those teachings. You see, you will always find a total blank. No one can mention any verse in any religious book referring to this. And the second argument which is presented in this verse, to which the statement kuntum khaira ummatin is a natural corollary, and as such the foundation was laid earlier. It says la nufarriqu bayna ahadin minhum wa nahnu lahu muslimun. We do not differentiate between any prophet or any prophets, any prophet and prophet, or any of the prophets. Now this is the subject of division which is being discussed throughout. So Islam can unite the whole mankind, and only Islam can unite the whole mankind because it does not differentiate between all the prophets, to some of whom some sections of the human society would be belonging. So tafriqa is described in complete perfection. You are not, you are admonished not to differ with each other and fall into sections within Islam. Not only this, but also within the larger scope of humanity, the larger concept of humanity. The dividing factors have always been the disbelief in other people's religious heads and founders. This is what still divides the whole mankind. So Islamic teaching has to be the best because it offers a solution for the unification of entire mankind under one flag, which all other religions fail to do. So if you want to see the proofs of this claim, they have been mentioned, and there is a natural logical conclusion which is being drawn now when the Holy Quran says kuntum khaira ummatin ukhrijat linnas. Time? All right, rest inshallah next time. You have reminded me 8 minutes after. Okay. Now we rest for a while for our question answers. Bashir Yasab, I have already answered your question, haven't I? But you have others, of course, because you always have couples of questions, not singles. Thank you. Thank you very much. You mean like you always did? Yes, come on, let's now invite questions. Starting from you, please. You can go to the microphone so that your question is also recorded. And ladies can also hear it, of course.
Assalamu alaikum. So, it's about this business of other sects not having imams. I've come across a Sufi, type of Sufi group who I've written to about recently, about the Murabitun, who have a sheikh in Spain, Abdul Qadir.
Yes, of course.
Do you know anything about that? I mean, they seem...
Yes, I have read about him, though not him himself. And the basic difference and distinction I've already pointed out is about somebody having been appointed by God or not appointed by God. Once the tafriqa has taken place, then nobody has a right to appoint an imam. So the self-same and self-made imams have no relevance to this issue at all. The question which would be put to them would be, have you been appointed by God Has God made you Imam? If not, then you do not mean anything. Because the promise made to Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, which he made to us, having received from God, was that an Imam would be raised by God. Only then Jamaat could be created. So if you ask that Sufi, he would, I hope, he would say that he has not been appointed by God. Otherwise, he would fall as an object of God's wrath. Well, we know he has not been appointed. Right. Before you start, please, there was another hand raised from this direction. Yes, please. Shah Sahib. Sayyid.
Assalamu alaikum, Hazur. Hazur, about Shia Imams.
Yes.
They believe in about 12 Imams. Was any of them or some of them were.
Not all believe in 12 Imams. Some, Asma Ashari, believe in 10 Imams, not 12 Imams.
Actually Imams, or were they just the holy people and not the
I have
Imams?
already explained this. I have already, during the course of my dars, explained this aspect. Perhaps I could not make myself clear, so you better listen to the cassette again. Thank you.
Thank you, Hazur. Sharif Wajra from North London. Hazur, I have got two questions, which relates to Hazrat Imam Hussain Hassan's reference, which you mentioned on the other dars, that if one person does not do a good, but he still can urge others to do good. Now this puts one in immediate danger of being accused of, as we say in Urdu, khud miyan fazihat auron ko nasihat. But more importantly, this is in manifest variance with the Holy Prophet ﷺ's that episode when a woman brought her child to Hazur and said that, could you admonish him that he eats too much sweet? And the Holy Prophet could not do that until the following day because he himself had eaten sweet that day. Now, my second question with Hazur.
Have you ever heard of this tradition? Huh? I don't think this tradition is authentic tradition at all.
And corrected and apologize. My second question is relevant to the construction of Khana Kaaba, which Hazur explained in the very first dars on Saturday. As Hazur quite rightly explained, that Khana Kaaba unites the Holy Prophet and Hazrat Ibrahim, peace be on them both. But there is another historical dimension to this question, and I would like Hazur to throw some light further on that. Well before the advent of Islam, Jews used to come to Mecca to visit Mecca in relation to Hazrat Ibrahim having constructed the Kaaba. And when the Meccan idolaters put the idols and statues in the Khana Kaaba, they stopped coming there. Now, one wonders, what was the motive of their coming to Khana Kaaba? Was it some sort of pilgrimage, as we do it like Umrah or something? Or was it just a visitor's visit to a historical monument? Thank you, Hazur.
You see, history is not very vocal on this subject. There are some mentions in some books which has to be further investigated how far they are valid. The process of decay set in gradually, and it had happened long before the advent of Islam, that Khana Kaaba was occupied by idols. So how far these reports are reliable about Jews coming and then leaving is an open question. because the Jews have had a long jealousy with Hazrat Ismail, Raziyallahu Ta'ala, Nas, alayhi salatu wasalam. And that jealousy, in fact, played havoc with their faith itself. And they started blaming Ismail as son of a bondwoman and as such totally deprived of all the blessings of God. So because the Khana Kaaba was more closely related to to Hazrat Ismail and his progeny, so it is very doubtful that the Jews, having left Jerusalem, would give any importance to this place, which of course is mentioned in the Bible, but it has not, it does not appeal to the Jewish mind or the Jewish heart. So those, reports which you have mentioned, first of all, they are not very clear as to the purpose, whether they did circuits or not, and so on and so forth. Secondly, they themselves are doubtful. Some pious Jews might have visited, I believe, because according to the Holy Quran, there always have been some pious Jews who were above these petty-mindedness, and they might have visited just for the sake of visiting a sacred holy place, but not to my knowledge as doing pilgrimage to Khana Kaaba. Any other hand? Yes, please. Rashid Sahib.
Only one today, please.
Thank you very much. And on
Thank
behalf
you.
of the whole audience,
Is it
thank
true
you.
to say, sir, that rejection of one prophet is the rejection of all the prophets?
Huh?
Rejection of one prophet is rejection of all the prophets of Allah.
So what? What is the question? This is a statement. The Holy Quran says, "La nufarriqu bayna ahadin min rusuli. Kullu amana billahi wa malaikatihi wa kutubihi wa rusuli. La nufarriqu bayna ahadin min rusuli." This subject has been discussed in other places in the Holy Quran. So it leaves no room for any true believer in Islam to reject any one of the prophets of God who was ever uh, raised to the station of prophethood by God anywhere in the world. This is the accepted belief based on this verse and other verses of all the Muslims. If there is unanimity on any issue, this is one of the issues on which there is unanimity.
I don't know what will happen. There are a lot of people who are not accepting the Prophet of Allah, Hazrat Masih Maud. So how they will reconcile themselves if they keep
They
on
will
doing?
not, because they believe he is not a prophet. They don't have to reconcile with anything. They believe he is not a prophet, so they reject him.
What will happen?
I've already told you that this is a matter to be decided by God. There are bound to be many people among non-Ahmadi Muslims who are God-fearing, who love God, who are devoted to God, who worship Him with all sincerity, who love Hazrat Rasul Akram Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and who have not been able to understand the message of Ahmadiyyat, either because it has not been conveyed to them or they have never heard of them. So God would treat them according to His general promise to the entire mankind that no such people have to fear anything.
Does
So
it
God
throw?
would decide, not you. Why should you
What
be
I'm trying to
worried?
ask is, does it
You would
throw
not
more?
even be called to stand witness against them.
Throw more responsibility on us to propagate
Of
Islam.
course, this is why I'm stressing so much on delivering the message and inviting people. I know we are responsible. If we see the truth and keep it to ourselves, we are responsible. Yes. Any other question, please? Yes.
Assalamualaikum, Azam. I've got a question. I don't know whether this has been given away tape before or it's just, my question is, I do accept the divine origin of Ahmadiyyat, but I have read in one of the articles in one of the Arab newspaper, they said that they want to reintroduce or re-establish the Khilafat. So what will happen if they do establish the...
They can't, it's impossible. Because Khilafat can only be established by God. And after having broken the relation with the appointed Khilafat, Khilafat-e-Rashida and also other Mujaddideen's Khilafah, how can they concoct Khilafat? It's not some recipe which you can make yourself. It is something which has to come from heaven. It's impossible. Many people have written on this issue. Abdul, what's his full name? Muhammad Abduhu Awib also has taken up the subject, and also some Turkish scholars. And Khilafah was once very popular as a subject of discussion in India. In those days, some Indian Muslim scholars also took up the subject. In the end, they all reach the blind alley. Khilafat is all right, but how can it be resurrected once it has become dead and unavailable? There is no formula available, no instrument which can reinstitute the Khilafat. This is something which is impossible. Some people may declare to be Khalifas, let them do, but when you ask them this question pointedly, has God appointed you? They would say no. Perhaps they say, we have been appointed by Saudi Arabia. So it would be not God's Khilafah, it would be Saudi Arabia's Khilafah. It would be meaningless to us.
Okay.
Any other question? Yes? Asr Ahmadi, huh?
Assalamu alaikum. Hazur, you said that an imam has to be appointed by God. Does that mean, as far as Ahmadiyyat is concerned, that Hazrat Masih Maud is is the imam and not
the imam who was appointed by God himself? That is why he was Al-Imam al-Mahdi.
right? And therefore the Khalifas are not.
Khalifas are not directly appointed by God, but they represent the imamah, and not hereditarily, but through an Islamic process of election. So as such, they become the continuation of that nema, which is revealed only by God. And this happened earlier, so this issue itself is not debatable. Even the non-Ahmadi Muslims, even Shias, know the importance of Khilafah, and this is the importance. That is why they continuously contest the claim of their claim that Hazrat Ali was the first caliph with other Muslims. This is the bone of contention for the last so many centuries. Why, if they believe in just imamat and they believe that it's hereditary, why must they claim that Hazrat Ali was the first caliph? There was no other caliph between him and Sallallahu, because that is important. If there is a gap, then Khilafat cannot be held unless you become the Khalifa through Khalifa, get the link through another Khalifa. You see, this is what is disturbing them. They know their weakness. If Hazrat Ali is to be considered by the Shiites as the fourth caliph, then his link with Hazrat Rasul Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam would be through Abu Bakr, Umar, Usman, and then he will fall in that order to be the fourth. So they know then that the first three Khilafat have to be also right. wrong Khilafat cannot give birth to right Khilafat. This is the issue involved. So the continuity of contact with prophethood is a must in Khilafah. But Muslims today generally don't understand the implications of these things, and some Shia verses and poems become popular, and just they go by the music of it and go on singing in the streets of Pakistan without ever realizing what they're saying. Once there was a very popular song in Pakistan which said, Ali ka pehla number, dam damadam mast kalandar, Ali ka pehla number. And all the Sunnis, Tom, Dicks and Harrys and even the scholars would go on reading it. Once some child in my presence said, Ali ka pehla number, I said, oh, don't do that. Ali is ka chautha number. So it is not just a question of sentimentality, who is best and who is, because you can't describe the better and the comparatively less in terms of chronological orders. This is not the issue involved at all. Allah knows best. Of course, Hazrat Abu Bakr has the authenticity of being a Siddiq, so you cannot debate that issue. But in the remaining of the three Khilafas, we don't know. So we should not take up an issue of which we are not aware. But this is a different issue altogether, so it's a very serious issue for us. If Ali was the first caliph, then Hazrat Abu Bakr was not a caliph. Then Hazrat Umar was not a caliph. Then Hazrat Usman was not a caliph. They were imposters, as the Shias would have us believe. So it's not just a sentimental thing which I pointed out to you. I insisted to point it to that time. The child never sing this song again, Ali ka pehla number. Always sing Ali ka chautha number. Then Damadam is all right. Go ahead. Yes, please. Last question, because it's time for prayer now.
Hazur, Assalamualaikum. Hazur, in the history of the prophets before Hazrat Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we do not learn that there were some Khalifas from the time of Adam up to Hazrat Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
You don't know? You don't learn?
Well,
the Holy Quran says there are.
They are all, as far I personally have studied as much, Hazur, they were all Allah ke Nabi the, they were all Paygambars of Allah.
What was the form of Khilafat after Hazrat Masih alayhi salatu wasalam? How many prophets among them can you count?
No prophet until Hazrat Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
The Khilafat still continues?
No, sir. This is my question. That were there Khalifas for those prophets before Hazrat Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam?
Hazrat Isa was before Hazrat sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
So was he a Khalifa or was he a messenger of
Who
God?
was a Khalifa? Hazrat Isa was a prophet, but he left a Khilafat behind, which was not prophethood. This is what I am telling you.
Yes, sir. So all the prophets.
This is the promise. So whatever form the Khilafat took earlier would take again in the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So there were different types of prophet of Khalifas, and that form would repeat itself in some form. So Mujaddidiyat was also a form of Khilafat after Hazrat Musa alayhi salatu wasalam. So there are 12 Mujaddideen, 13 Mujaddideen in fact, 12 before Hazrat Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. So all this is repeated in one way or another.
That brings us to the very origin of the Quran, Hazur, when Allah says, Inni ja'alun fil arzi khalifatun. Hazrat Adam.
I have already repeatedly mentioned that Khalifatullah is something else, and Khalifatul Rasul is something else. That Khilafat which was promised to Ahmad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was that of Khalifatul Rasul, a Khilafat in Ummah, entirely and totally subordinate to Ahmad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. that could have taken different forms, and it took different forms. So if you study as such in this larger, all-comprehensive definition, Mujaddideen would also be referred to as types of Khulafa. All right?
Thank you. Jazakallah.
Let's say Sunnahs. Assalamu alaikum.
أعوذ بالله